Hi everyone, welcome. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for participants to trickle in. We've just had our vegan cook along, so do let us know if you are part of that, and also just say hi in the chat and let us know who's here, what publication you're from. Also let us know if you've enjoyed the festival, because we are on day 6. It's almost over. I cannot believe it. I think just while everybody's still joining, I might just quickly go over how the session will run. So this is our session on creating content that matters, and I'm joined by Duncan MacRae. For those of you who are new to how webinar works and how these sessions generally work, the Student Opportunities Festival, you can use the chat function just to say hi or have any comments, stick them in there. Or if you have any specific questions for our speaker, if you pop them in the Q&A, I'll be monitoring that throughout the session and we'll get to the questions right at the end. We're looking to finish the session at roughly 10 to the hour, but if you have additional questions that we haven't answered, do come along and join us in the coffee shop. That is just a casual, not recorded session where you can ask anything else that you perhaps didn't get a chance to during this session, or if other questions inspire you to query about anything else. And like I say, this session will be recorded, and this recording will be available from next week. You can also join the conversation with other attendees and other audiences from other talks at Student Ops Fest on Twitter. Hashtag Student Ops Fest on Twitter. Or you can email me as well any comments or additional questions, and I'll pass them on to the speakers. My email address is communications@spajournalism.com. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Duncan. I'm sure that anybody who attended our Scottish Regional Conference will remember Duncan. He did a few talks our last couple of conferences, and he's no stranger to the SPA family. So thank you again for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Mila. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Edinburgh. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be. We have an awful lot that we're going to try and cover today, so we'll try and get through everything. You might want to grab a pen and paper or have a device handy to make some notes. I hope that you might learn something. If not, I hope you might be inspired in some way. And if not, well, I'm going to set you some challenges along the way. So there's going to be 10 writing challenges. And the idea behind that is if you choose to take part in it, you will end up with 10 original pieces of content. You'll have your own portfolio. It's going to be good writing practice for you, but importantly, you could use it if you're ever applying for jobs to showcase your talents. So this is the sort of stuff that we're going to try and get through today. So we're going to talk about writing for your reader, dealing with press releases and public relations officers, news and feature writing, and of course there will be those challenges along the way. Because we're trying to cover a lot today, and I don't even know if we'll have time to finish, but we'll try. I'm going to be posting some links to additional reading on Twitter. So this hashtag, SOF portfolio, check it out. I'm going to be adding links to things over the weekend, and everything should be up there by Monday. Okay, so if you're going to write an article, the most important thing you have to think about is your reader. Your readers are the most important thing, absolutely. So you have to think about who are your target readers? What are they interested in? So one of the things I really like to do if I'm working with a new editorial team is to host a workshop. It's a readership workshop. It's not based on facts. It's not anything scientific, but that's not the point. The point of it is to get everyone on the team really thinking about who they are actually writing for. So what I would do with them is I would ask them to think about the readers that they've met at events or spoken to on the phone or they've exchanged emails with, and I would ask them about 20 questions, and it's just to build up a picture of a generic target reader. So like I say, nothing scientific. It would start with something like, would you think that our target reader is generally male or female? And if the answer to that is kind of split, you can have 2 target readers, and I continue with the questions, something like, what kind of occupation do they have? How old are they? Do they have children? Where do they live? What kind of restaurants do they go to? What kind of TV shows and movies do they like? What are their hobbies? And I asked about 20 questions, and by the end of it, we've created a poster with a generic target reader. And I have to say, every time I host that workshop, at the start, everyone thinks that it's a bit daft and a bit of a waste of time. And by the end of the workshop, they realise it absolutely wasn't, because they realise that is the first time they have genuinely thought about who they're trying to write for. And it's certainly the first time that they've actually sat down as a team and discussed their target readers. So if you're at an established publication, they may well have conducted a readership survey, and that will help you to get some actual facts about your readers, and you can use that to help you with your readership workshop. It's worth bearing in mind, though, that the people responding to that survey are the people who read your publication. That might not necessarily be the kind of people you're trying to target. It's just the people that the content you've been creating up until that point have been bringing to your publication. If you are not at an established publication, or even if you are, one of the simple ways to get to know your readers better is by conducting polls on social media. You can ask very simple questions to get an idea about what they're interested in and what they want to read about. Established publishing companies will probably have conducted these surveys, and they will have compiled media packs. They're tailored really for the sales team's clients, but there's good information about the readers in there. If you're thinking about writing an article for a particular publication, then check out the website. You can probably find a media pack there that will have information regarding the readers and help you to tailor your content for them. One of the simplest ways to get to know your reader and what they want is to talk to them at events, conferences. If you're a music journalist, talk to them at gigs, music festivals. If you're a sports journalist, then outside the football stadium, talk to them, get to know them, ask them, do they read your publication? If so, what do they like? What do they not like? What would they like to see more of? What other publications do they read, and what do they like about them? Okay, so we said we were going to talk about dealing with press releases and how to write a news story based on that. So the first thing that you need to think is a press release is not a news story. A press release is a statement pushed out to the press on behalf of a company or a person to try and make them sound good. So it's not a news story. You don't want to be promoting companies, and it's not going to be interesting for your reader if you just publish it. But if you did publish it word for word, it creates other problems. For example, it has a negative effect on your search engine optimization, so it will have a negative impact on how high up your articles appear in search results on Google, for example. And of course, your readers pick up on this. If they see that you're publishing stuff that's just exactly the same that's published elsewhere, why would they come back to your publication? And what you have to think about is, why would your readers care about this story? Have a good read through the press release and think to yourself, what is it about this that matters to our readers? What is it that's important to them? Because that is the very essence of news writing. So really think about, what do they care about? Why do they care about it? Why do they care about it? What would they want to know? What do they need to know? This will help you to tailor your article for your specific target reader. One thing you need to do, I mentioned that some companies do just publish press releases word for word, including spelling mistakes and typos. You definitely don't want to do that. It's not a good look. But also, is there anything in that press release that you're not sure about? Because this is your story. You're responsible for it. If there's something you're not sure about, you can't publish that. You have to check, do your research, go back to the PR, Make sure that you are confident that what you are writing is accurate and true. Press releases are renowned for being full of promotional, wishy-washy garbage. There's all sorts of words in there that are just in there to make a company sound good. And those are the first things that a journalist would cut out. Here are some press release buzzwords. There was a guy who conducted some research on a website called PR Newswire. It's got loads and loads of press releases on there. He wanted to know what were the most common buzzwords or terms in press releases. And this is what he found. The most common one was demand generation, leading provider, world's leading, leverage. What you'll probably notice from these terms is some of them don't really mean anything, and the others are just rubbish. It's just fluff. These are the first things that you would cut out of any news story. The worst one is leading. You see it in almost every press release. The world's leading. Get rid of it. Just get rid of it. So if you need to go back to the press officer and ask them some information, or if you're doing an original story, I know that particularly for student journalists, it can actually be a nerve-wracking experience to talk to a PR. When I was studying journalism, even the most overly confident, cocky people in my class were nervous wrecks when it came to picking up the phone and just speaking to a PR. And the thing is, you don't have to worry about it. It's much easier said than done. And it really gets better with experience. The more you do it, the more relaxed and confident you'll be. But what I can say is, get yourself organized. If you need something from a PR, then make sure you're clear in your mind exactly what you need and be assertive. I've seen adverts for journalism jobs where the companies say, we're looking for a really aggressive journalist. And that's ridiculous. I mean, have you ever met an aggressive person? Do you want to deal with them? No. So you don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to be passive. Be assertive. Know what you want. Be very clear about who you are, what you're doing, and what you need help with. And this seems so obvious, being polite, being nice to people. But some journalists aren't, and you would be amazed just how far being polite to people gets you. So be polite, treat PRs the way that you would want to be treated as well. And PRs are there to help you. If you need more information, if you need to clarify anything, go to them. If you need any images, if you want their help to arrange an interview, they're there to help you sort that out. But if they say, we will definitely get you a comment from a client by Friday, don't just expect that that will happen, because sometimes it won't. And if you have a deadline on Friday, they've said that they'll definitely give you that comment by Friday. And if they don't do it, it's not their fault and it's not their client's fault. It's your fault because it's your story and you're responsible for it. You always have to have backup plans, have backup ideas for stories, backup ideas for people that you can get comments from. And also, when you're speaking to a PR, don't give them your actual deadline. If your deadline is Friday, tell them your deadline is Wednesday and you need it by end of Wednesday. If they've not given you what they promised, you can go back to them on Thursday and say, right, if you get it to me by midday, I can probably use this. If they don't, well, you've still got some time to find someone else to speak to you. So instead of me just sitting here and talking at you about what I think, I thought it might be nice if I sit here and talk at you about what other people think. So I've met a lot of PRs over the years, and I reached out to them to ask, what advice should I give you? I also put out a little shout out on LinkedIn, and I got a lot of opinions and advice from PRs that I haven't worked with yet. These are just the main ones. These were the most common bits of feedback. PRs love it if you can give them feedback. If they send you a press release and you're not going to use it for whatever reason, just tell them. Tell them that you're not going to use it. That saves them a lot of time and hassle chasing you up to see, are you interested? Are you interested? And even better, if you can give them a reason why you're not going to use it. Tell them it's not really suitable for your readers. Tell them what you are looking for, what your readers would be interested in. They'll love it as well if you can supply them with a forward features list. So if you've got a plan of what kind of features you're going to be working on in the year ahead, send them that list. They might have clients that would be able to help you, might be able to contribute to those. If you don't have such a list, you can at least send them a list of topics that you're interested in covering. And PRs love to catch up with journalists. I think part of it is they like to spend money on the company credit card, on the drinks and the lunches, but they actually like meeting journalists to find out what kind of readers are you targeting? What kind of content are you interested in writing? How do you like us to contact you? Do you want us to email you, phone you, contact you on social media? What do you like? How do you want to work with us? And they like to just get to know you as a person. It's nice to get to know the people that you're going to be working with on a regular basis. Because of lockdown, it's not so easy to do proper catch-ups, but I've been reliably informed by them that they would be very happy even to do a quick catch-up in a video call. One of the things that seems to annoy them a lot is if a journalist makes a request and there's not enough information there for them to go to their client and be confident in what they're trying to get from their client. So think about what you need, exactly what you need, put all the details together in one email and then send that. And this piece of advice, now this sort of harks back to the being polite thing. Don't be a penis. I apologise for the vulgar language, but this is a genuine piece of advice from genuine PRs. And actually, whenever I talk to PRs and journalists about how you should treat PRs, this is the #1 most common bit of advice. Journalists, PRs are just doing their job. As one of them put it to me, sometimes we just have to try to sell you a turd. And they know it, but they have to do it because that's what their client wants. And they say, don't be afraid to say no, but just be nice about it. So if you're going to write a news story based on a press release, or maybe something that's completely original to yourself, news stories have a very formal style. They are straight to the point. You have to explain to the reader as quickly as possible exactly what has happened. And news stories are structured in a sort of pyramid shape with the most important information at the top, least important information at the bottom. I'll discuss that a bit later. And you need to think of the 5 W's and the 1 H. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. These are the questions that your readers will want the answers to. So those answers should be in your news story. And you want to have them as high up in the article as possible. So get as much of that in the first sentence. What doesn't fit in the first sentence will go into the second and third. Try to make sure that your sentences are no more than 30 words long to keep it nice and manageable for your readers. And this is your story, whether you've based it on a press release or maybe you've based it on a story you've seen published elsewhere. You need to make your news story unique to you. You need to be the owner of this story. You can do that by finding an angle that hasn't really been covered by other people, perhaps just the angle that is most suitable for your target readers. One of the simplest ways is to get original comments. That will make your story original to you. And quotes are the heart and soul of every news story. So make sure that you have some good quotes in there. People are interested in people. So we want to know, what do they think? What's their opinion? We like to read about that. Once you've written your article, have a good read through it and read it back to yourself as though you are the reader. Imagine that you haven't done the research, you haven't interviewed people. Does it all make sense? Is all the information there? Are there any other questions that pop into your mind? Because if there are, you need to answer those in your news story. So I thought I would give some more tips on news writing. These are the kind of things that student journalists tend to ask me about. So one of the common ones is, where can you find the news? How do you get ideas for news stories or feature stories? But it's like wet, wet, wet sang. News is all around us. Oh no, wait, that's love. Well, news is all around us, and it's a mindset that a journalist gets into. And once you're in that mindset, you do see news stories everywhere. One of my lecturers used to tell me to buy a dog. She said, Duncan, you must buy a dog. I don't really recommend that. But her thinking was, you would be amazed how many posters there are around town in shop windows and attached to lampposts. If you stop and read those, there's probably a news story in there. And she, owning a dog, found that it was a great way to loiter and just hang around lampposts. I don't think you need to own a dog to do that, so I wouldn't recommend buying a dog just for that. But do take the time to stop and look at things. Sometimes I go back to my own university, University of Central Lancashire in Preston, and I give talks to the students there. One of my friends does the same thing, and about 3 years ago, he was on the train to Preston, and he was thinking, oh, I'm not actually planned a talk. What shall I talk about? And he decided that what he would do was, on the short walk between the train station and the university, he would see how many news stories he could spot on his way. And he said he spotted about 12 really good news stories. For example, he saw a jewellery store called ISIS, and he went in and he spoke to the manager and he said, well, there's been all of these stories in the news about ISIS and terrorism. How's that affected your business? And they said, it's terrible. Nobody comes in the store anymore. That's a news story. So sometimes it's just a case of seeing something a little bit unusual, and taking the time to ask some questions about it. Now, my lecturers always told me to imagine you're in the pub. Some of them were never out of the pub, to be honest. But if you study journalism, your lecturers probably told you this. How should you begin your news story? Imagine you're on the way to a pub to meet your friends and you see something amazing, like you see Jessica Alba riding a unicorn around the car park of B&Q. You race to the pub to tell your friends what you've just seen. What is the first sentence that you blurt out to them? That's the intro to your news story. So imagine you're in the pub, which is basically all we've been able to do in the past few months. We should be able to go to the pub on Monday. Sort out your punctuation and grammar. You know, I don't think I ever was really taught about punctuation and grammar in school. I only really learned it in first year at uni studying journalism. And in that first year, lots of people on my course complained to the lecturers. They said, we don't want to know about this. We're paying you all this money. We study this in school. We want to learn how to be journalists. And they said, if you want to be a good journalist, you need to make sure you have a really good understanding of punctuation and grammar. And these students said, no, we know this, we know it. And the lecturer said, okay, we will set you all a test on basic spelling, punctuation and grammar. And if everyone passes, we'll just skip this and go on to the next thing. So they set the test. And out of everyone on that year, only one person passed the test. And it was me, the one person who definitely didn't know about punctuation and grammar. And even I got a terrible mark, but it was just a pass. But yeah, even if you think you know about punctuation and grammar, do read up on it. I'm going to put some links on that hashtag SOF portfolio. So it should be there by Monday at the latest, with some really good information and also a test that you can take so you can see how good you are. When you're writing a news story, you need to add balance. You definitely don't want to be writing something biased. Probably the simplest way to add balance is if someone gives you an opinion that's on one side of an argument, simply go and get an opinion from someone who has a differing opinion. So you want to have maybe two quotes from two people per news story at least. And it's amazing how many journalists allow their own opinions to kind of creep into their news stories. Just don't do it. So when I was at uni, I did a radio journalism course and I had to put together a bulletin, and it was pretty good, but I finished it with a sentence that kind of was a bit presumptuous. It wasn't based on anyone else's opinion. It wasn't based on fact. It was kind of my opinion creeping in. And my lecturer said to me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Duncan." And he said, "Who's Duncan? Why would anyone care what Duncan thinks?" And I thought, oh, that's a good point, actually. So save your opinions for your opinion features. We'll talk about that later. This is the first challenge. If you want to get involved, write a news story based on a press release that you find on PR Newswire. Most companies have a little press section, so you can find press releases on their websites as well, but PR Newswire has loads of them. Give it a go. I would aim for about 300 words, certainly no more than 500. 300 words should be good. This is the news pyramid that I mentioned earlier, and you can see all the who, what, why, where, when, and how. That goes towards the top. Then get some really good quotes in there, maybe in the third or fourth paragraph. Then any other really important, decent quotes. Least important information at the bottom. If anything is not really important and not really relevant, just don't put it in. So what is the difference between news writing and feature writing? So for print, at least, news stories are written in the past tense and features are written in the present tense. So you would say for a news story, he said, she said. Features, you would say, he says, she says. And the style is different. So news is very formal, very structured and to the point. With features, you can be a lot more creative. You can use more flowery language. You can be much more descriptive, paint a picture for the readers. And with news stories, you get straight to the point. With features, you can use this thing called the drop intro, where you lead the reader in an intriguing way, maybe setting the scene, and then maybe fourth or fifth paragraph, you'd let the reader know what your article is actually about. It's a really great way of just sort of bringing the reader into it in a more subtle, interesting way. News stories are very time sensitive. You want to get them published as soon as you possibly can. Feature writing is usually not as time sensitive. Some will be, depending on the style of the article. And with news, I would say try and get a couple of quotes in there at least, but they're usually shorter than features. Features will allow you the opportunity to bring more voices into your article. As a general rule, I try and bring a quote from one person per 250 words. And that doesn't mean that every 250 words I have a quote, but if I write a 1,000 word article, I try and get comments from 4 people. It's not set in stone. It's not set in stone. So just think about how your article flows. If you bring too many people into your article, then they might not be able to say anything really substantial. If you have too few people quoted, then you might end up using too many of their quotes, and that might include stuff that's not really that interesting. Okay, we're on to the features. Most people actually prefer writing features, it seems. But I think that when you get into news writing, it is really interesting. It's good to get an exclusive. But this is the first of our styles of feature, so we're going to look at 9 of these. Like I say, we can't go into too much detail, so please check that hashtag SOF portfolio. News analysis is probably the most time sensitive of all features because it is based on a recent news story. So I would aim to get a news analysis feature published within a week of the original news story being published. When you do this, you're going to want to choose something that is a really big, important news story, certainly something that is really relevant to your readers. And think about, I think the best way to approach a news analysis feature is to think, okay, that news has happened, that thing has happened. How will that affect our readers? How will that affect their lives, their jobs, their hobbies? What does the future hold for them because of that news? You're going to have to do a lot of research because you're going to go into much more detail than you did with the news story. You can provide more insight and more analysis. So you need to do your research in order for you to be able to do that. Because it's longer, you can bring in more opinions and you can bring in more facts. And this is your second challenge. Write a news analysis based on a recent news story on the BBC News website. So take a look if you choose to do this. Take a look at the BBC website. It could be the hard news section, it could be local news, global news, sports news, entertainment, but find a news story that you really like and write a news analysis article based on that. I would say for features, aim for at least 800 words. The investigative feature is probably the kind of feature that people enjoy writing the most. It's a little bit like the news analysis feature in as much as you're delving deeper into a particular topic, providing more information, more analysis, but it's not as time sensitive. In fact, it might not be time sensitive at all because you can literally write about anything at all. You will have to speak to the people who are close to the matter, as they say. So people who have a good understanding of this topic, maybe they've got first-hand experience of it, whatever you're writing about, speak to them, speak to as many of them as possible. So depending on what you're investigating, because you don't have to write about something serious. It could be something that seems trivial to most people. It probably will matter to some people, hopefully your readers. But some people might not want to talk to you. For example, if you did an investigative feature about the new law that's been introduced in Hong Kong, there would be lots of people who would probably want to speak to you, but definitely wouldn't want to be named. Some people might even be too scared to speak to you. So if you can name your sources, do it because it adds so much weight to your article. It helps the reader to feel that they can really trust what you're saying is accurate. If they don't want to be quoted, then don't quote them. You can say, we'll speak off the record and get information just for your understanding of it, but you won't use that in your article. That could be useful anyway. Check your facts. If you're delving into this topic, make sure that what you're saying is true. If someone tells you something, don't just assume that it's a fact. Try and corroborate it somehow, even if it means interviewing extra people just to be sure. Persevere. Depending on what you're writing about, people might not want you to be investigating it. They might not want you to write about it. You can end up having a lot of doors slammed in your faces or phones slammed down on you. But just stick at it. Just stick at it. And it could be worth it. So probably the most famous piece of investigative journalism that I can think of is the Watergate scandal, you know, the big political scandal. And there was a couple of guys who were responsible for that journalism. Can't remember both their names. One was called Bob Woodward. And if they didn't persevere, then that political corruption would never have been exposed. So it's worth sticking at it. And here is your third challenge. Write an investigative piece about an issue that's important to you. Nice and vague, nice and general, but that's because I don't know who you are. Think about what is important to you and have a go at writing an investigative feature based on that. I've just got a couple of examples of investigative features. I just wanted to pick some random ones just to give you an idea of the kind of things that have been published. These weren't actually that random. There was a reason that it was extra interesting. So on the left, you can see here, there's a feature called Jimmy's World, which was a story about an 8-year-old boy in America who was a heroin addict, and his parents supplied him with drugs and they would inject him with heroin. And it was written by Janet Cook, who had met this family. She had seen it happen firsthand. And she said that Jimmy wasn't the only one. There was other children just like him all over America in the same sort of situation. You can see the intro here. Jimmy is 8 years old and a third-generation heroin addict, a precocious little boy with sandy hair, velvety brown eyes, and needle marks freckling the baby-smooth skin of his thin brown arms. This was a really shocking story and a shocking intro. And this really hit people in America hard. This story swept the nation. People wanted to know, who is this boy? How can we help him? Even politicians were getting involved. They wanted to change laws to protect boys like Jimmy. And Janet Cook won the Pulitzer Prize for this article, and it was quite significant. She was the first African-American lady to be awarded the Pulitzer Prize. She was also the first, and I think only person, to hand back the Pulitzer Prize because she had completely made up the whole story. It was entirely fabricated. She hadn't just made up the quotes. She hadn't just made up the people she quoted. She had made up the entire story, and that was exposed. Interestingly, Bob Woodward, one of the guys who did the Watergate scandal stories, he was the assistant managing editor at the time, and he was the one who submitted her article for the Pulitzer Prize. He gained a reputation for very rarely naming his sources, and people, unfortunately, started to doubt every article he'd ever written, which is a shame. On the right-hand side, we have an article called Death of a Playmate. This was written by Teresa Carpenter, who was awarded the Pulitzer Prize because she was the runner-up to Janet Cook originally. And her article is about this unfortunate young lady, Dorothy Stratton, who was one of these Playboy bunnies. And it's a very sad story. I think she was 20 and she was murdered by her ex. And Teresa has created a very well-written article, very insightful, published over 12 pages, and it goes into a lot of detail about the events that led up to that unfortunate incident. And in a way, it's kind of an expose about the whole Playboy Mansion thing. So I just wanted to show you that, just to give you a couple of ideas of what you could potentially write about. You definitely don't have to write about anything as serious as that. And I would say, don't make up anything, because it's a very slippery slope to begin on, and you will get caught out eventually. Actually, if you're interested in that stuff, the Watergate scandal was involved in a movie called All the President's Men, a very good movie, worth checking out. And the story about Janet Cook and Jimmy's World is actually being made into a Netflix movie, so that should be available soon. There's another really good movie called Shattered Glass, which is something similar and also based on a true story, so worth checking out. Let's take a look at the case study. Case study. Let's ask my friend Dougal. Okay, Dougal, what is a case study?
According to Wikipedia, in the social and life sciences, a case study is a research method involving an up-close, in-depth, and detailed examination of a particular case. For example, a case study in medicine may examine a specific patient a doctor treated, and a case study in business might study a particular firm's strategy.
Yes, so I hope you heard that. But basically, you are going to be examining how a person or a company has achieved something. So what was the problem they were dealing with? How did they overcome it? What was the result? When I write a case study, I keep it very simple. I put it in 4 sections: the client, the challenge, the strategy, and the result. Ask the difficult questions because the company might just want to talk about the nice things. I think it's good to ask, what were the hurdles that you faced? They don't always want to talk about that, but ask them about it and focus on the positives in that regard. How did they overcome them? How did they overcome those hurdles? Speak to everyone involved. You don't just want to get one person's opinion on it. And also, one of the things people love reading case studies for is if they're in a similar situation, they like to think, oh, well, they were going through that. What can I learn from that? Can I do the same thing? So read your article through and think, if someone was in the same situation, what could they learn from it? And your 4th challenge, write a case study about how a company in your town or city achieved something. Okay. How-to guide. I'll just try and whiz through this one. A how-to guide is pretty self-explanatory. You're telling a reader how to do something. I wrote my first how-to guide when I was 8 years old. Miss Sharp asked me to write an article explaining how to boil an egg. Whenever I write a how-to guide, I always read it back and I think, can the reader follow this if they've got no idea how to do this? Can they follow it and achieve it just as easily as they could read my article and boil an egg? Write it step by step. If someone has no idea how to do it, tell them where to begin. What next? What next? Headed sections can really help to break up the text and also help the reader to follow what it is they're supposed to be doing, as can photos and videos. You've probably seen various articles like on BuzzFeed. They use a lot of visuals in there. It's good for the reader to not just read how to do something, but also to see how to do it. And like I say, read it back. Can the reader actually achieve this goal having read your article? Challenge number 5, interview an expert and write a how-to article explaining how to do something. You could interview a chef and ask him how to boil an egg. You could speak to a gymnast and ask how to do a backflip. You could speak to a business person and ask how to turn a company into a multi-million-pound business. The Listicle article, I'm sure you've all seen these. BuzzFeed loves them. I would say avoid top 10s or 10 bests because out of all the numbers involved in listicles, 10 is the worst according to research. People seem to think that the number 10 is somehow contrived, that you're maybe including items that aren't worth including just to make it up to 10, or you're missing out items just to round it down to 10. So pick a more random number. Keep it in bite-sized chunks. Listicles lend themselves to that anyway, but make sure that each item you include in your listicle doesn't have reams and reams of text. Keep it fairly short, fairly simple. Visual appeal, like with BuzzFeed, if you can add in any videos or GIFs, then that will really help to bring your article to life and break up the text. Include remarkable content. Every single item on your list has to deserve to be on that list. If you've got one weak item on the list, then it makes your whole article weak. So everything needs to be really interesting, really funny, really surprising. If you've got 9 strong entries on your list, then you'll have a strong listicle. And challenge number 6 is write a listicle based on your favourite band, singer, actor, or sports team. So the profile, let's ask Dougal. Hey Dougal. Okay, Dougal. Okay, Google. What is a profile feature?
On the website egmncorp.com, they say, a profile feature is a newspaper article that explores the background and character of a particular person.
Okay, it doesn't have to be a person. It could be a company, it could be a city, it could be a planet, but usually it will be a person. You're going to have to do a lot of research into that person. If you can interview them, even better. If you can observe them, like if you can tag along with them for a day or even just watch them on TV, that's good. If they are dead, it makes it more difficult to interview them. I would recommend not getting involved with Ouija boards. I don't really want to be responsible for someone opening a portal to hell. Things are bad enough as it is. But you can interview people who know them or have met them. Ask open questions. You want the reader to really get to know this person. Ask about their thoughts. How did they think about something? How did they feel? If you've done your research and you're interviewing people, you'll probably be able to spot when people tell you something new that isn't available elsewhere. Include that and check that what you're saying is accurate. If you're going into detail about one person or one company, they're going to be pretty annoyed if you get something wrong. So double check, triple check. Challenge number 7, write a profile based on somebody noteworthy from your hometown. My hometown, for example, the inventor of TV was from there. So I could do that. It doesn't have to be someone like that. It could be someone who does lots of charity work, anything. The opinion article. This is where you get to actually say what you think. Choose a topic that you're really passionate about. When you write it, you have to be opinionated. You don't have to be obnoxious, but give a strong opinion. If you pick something you're passionate about, you probably will have a strong opinion on it anyway. Back up your opinion. If there's any statistics, any research, anything that you can add to sort of back up that what you're saying is correct, then that's good. Keep it short, concise, and by that I mean it doesn't have to be too long. If you've got nothing of interest to say beyond 500 words, then keep it to 500 words. And I would also advise when you're doing opinion pieces not to write opinions about other people's opinions, because that can end up in an annoying slang and match. Just best not to get involved with that. So this is just a blog, an opinion piece. Challenge number 8, write an opinion piece on something you feel strongly about. The Vox-pop is probably the easiest feature to write. Vox-pop stands for Vox Populi. It's the Latin for voice of the people. So what you do with the Vox-pop feature is you ask one question to a bunch of different people to get a bunch of different answers. So choose a topic that you think people will have an opinion on. You're going to want to ask random people to get random answers. Some people might not want to talk to you, so don't worry about that. There will be lots of people who will want to talk to you. People like to have they like to be asked what their opinion is and stuff. I would recommend trying to get between 5 and 8 opinions in a Vox-pop. That seems like enough, but not too many. And try to get a mixture of opinions. If everyone's giving you the same opinion, just keep asking other people until you get something different. And you might want to ask for their names, ages, and occupations to go along with your feature. Challenge number 9, write a Vox-pop about how people have been affected by lockdown. The anniversary piece. So for anniversary pieces, you do have to get organised. You have to know what events are coming up, what anniversaries are coming up in advance. It's not so good if you just realise on the day, oh, it's an anniversary today, let's do a feature, because you're not going to have much time to properly research it and write it. It's going to be rushed. It won't be very good. Check the date, because if you're doing an anniversary piece, you want to make sure that you get the date right. You want to be published on the right date. Set the scene. What was it like back then? If you can speak to people who were actually there, they can help you do that. What was it like to be there? Because your readers will want to feel like they're there as well. But also, if you can tie it in to the present day, how did whatever happened back then change life now? How did that affect it? Challenge number 10 is write an anniversary article on a significant event that took place in the month of August in history. So I just have a few minutes to quickly whiz through an example of how myself and my colleagues at Marketing Gazette took one press release and we created 10 pieces of content, one news story and 9 features, all different styles. We based it on this Volkswagen press release. For the sake of time, I won't go into too much detail about it, but Volkswagen had published a seemingly racist advert on Instagram and Twitter. This was their statement saying the actions they were going to take because of that. So we wrote a news story. This was our news story. Volkswagen admits its ethical judgment is not good enough. It was a simple, standard news story, nothing fancy, but we wanted to delve into this deeper. We wanted to know, how could a company like that screw up things so badly? And what should they have done differently? What could companies learn from that? This was the news analysis piece that we created. So I put a shout out on a website called Response Source, asking if anyone had any opinions or advice. I also managed to get hold of some research that was conducted by a marketing agency. So they contacted me. They'd heard that I was working on this article. They had begun this research into this kind of topic before lockdown. Their research had kind of been put on hold, but they shared their research with me. And one of the people involved in that research was the former president of Cambridge University's Black and Minority Ethnic Campaign. So we got lots of good opinions and we got some really interesting research that nobody else has seen. So we wanted to delve into this a bit more because obviously we've seen Black Lives Matter in the news a lot recently. We wanted to write an article, an investigative piece looking at racism or discrimination in the marketing sector. We wanted to know how the industry could deal with that. So again, we put another shout out on Response Source. We got a bunch of very interesting people contacting us about this, including Trevor Robinson, who is a black guy who'd been involved in advertising for 20 years. He was one of the driving forces behind the "You've Been Tangoed" adverts. Some of you might have seen that. There was another guy called Chris Kenna. He was a guy who owns his own advertising company. He's a black gay guy. He's really interesting, got very, very interesting background. He claims to be the first black baby born on the Isle of Man. He joined the army when he was 16. He got married, had kids, came out as gay. And we also had Jamie Love, marketing director for Pride Edinburgh, who got in touch, and a whole bunch of other people. I reached out to some industry analysts as well to see if they had any research that I could include. Gartner had some research that they shared with me. All these opinions and that research helped us to put together this article, Stop Being Terrified. We wanted to look at a case study. Trevor Robinson, the Tango guy, his company actually has conducted a lot of really interesting campaigns based on diversity and equality. This was one of them. It was all about getting London's youth, particularly black youth, away from gangs and into the creative industries. I don't think I've got time to go into this, but you can find it on the website. It was a great campaign. One of the guys that we spoke to about the news analysis piece, he was very opinionated about this company saying things just for the sake of it when it comes to social movements. Because he was so opinionated, I said, why don't you write an opinion article for us? So this is what he did. The dangers of paying lip service. Now, this is the guy I mentioned before, Chris Kenna, the guy who was first black baby in the Isle of Man, joined the army when he was 16. Also, the founder of a really interesting advertising agency. I thought he was perfect to do a profile feature on, so that's exactly what we did. one of the members of our team at the moment, she is a member of the LGBTQ plus community. She really wanted to get involved in some more content pride related. And so she created this really great listicle, focuses on some of the most inspirational, supportive social media influencers from that community. And I mentioned Jamie Love, the guy who is marketing director at Pride Edinburgh. When I spoke to him, one of the things he was really passionate about was helping LGBTQ plus members get into marketing. And he really was interested in the sort of discrimination that they face. So he wrote this article, How to Create a Diverse Marketing Team. We'd covered a lot of diversity issues. We hadn't at this point covered one of the most common ones, the gender pay gap. In marketing, it's mainly women. It's made up by mainly women, but women take up most of the junior jobs and men take up most of the senior jobs. We wanted to write an article about what women in the industry can do to empower themselves to get the promotional job chances that they deserve. So I reached out to people. I did a shout out on Gorkana, and I was contacted by a bunch of people. One in particular was a committee member on an organisation called Women in PR, and she actually said, I think other committee members would like to get involved and offer their advice. So she went off and got some opinions for me. So between myself and her, we created that Vox-pop article offering advice to women. And I wanted to include this, an anniversary piece, because I was doing this presentation. I thought, I must do an anniversary article. I really struggled. I spent a day thinking about this, couldn't find anything, came back to it, and I realised that it was 1 year on since the Advertising Standards Authority banned adverts that are harmful. They have harmful gender stereotypes. So this is what I based this article on. What has changed since then? It sort of snowballed, because when people found out that I was writing about this, and people had found out we were covering a lot of stories about diversity and equality, I was now inundated. And I got some research from an industry analyst company called Forrester, and lots of people wanted to talk to me about this. And the opinions were very varied. So there's some very strong opinions and very interesting article. By the end of this, we'd taken one press release and we had 10 articles, one news story, 9 features. So 9 of these articles were completely unique to us. Through this process, we had gained 25 new contacts, and we'd been offered 8 exclusive contributed articles. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Duncan. That was incredibly insightful stuff. I think our listeners there got a lot out of that. I'm so sorry, everyone. We'll have to move this into the coffee chat, because we are at exactly 2 o'clock and the next speaker will be looking to come in. But we're coffee shop table 1 if you'd like to join us there. And Duncan, again, thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you. Cheers.